Coming at you on today's Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we're going to take a look at 5 players that have recently been made available for trades by their respective teams before we take a look at that list for some potential Sixers trade targets going into the deadline. What say you? Do the Sixers need to make a trade? Couple of consecutive losses without Joel Embiid, so type Y for yes or N for no. Share how you're feeling about this basketball team down below in the comment section right now. This report coming from Adrian Wojnarowski on the latest 76ers trade rumors that Daryl Morey is always big game hunting, but I think it's more likely some upgrades on the margins for Philadelphia. Philly in a great position in the offseason to make some more dramatic upgrades because of their impending salary cap space, some valuable draft picks as well, and a lineup with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey that good players would certainly love to join. So with that, if the 76ers don't go after a big fish, these are some realistic trade targets that the 76ers could take a gander at, and we begin with 2 players on the same squad, and that's the Sacramento Kings. Not necessarily having the same level of success that they had last year when they were the 3 seed, lost to the Golden State Warriors in that epic first-round series, which went the distance 7 games, and Steph Curry went off in Game 7 on the road. And now this Kings team trying to find their way a little bit with sky-high expectations, and they're looking at that roster thinking, okay, we might need a couple of upgrades here. So could they trade away a Harrison Barnes? Could they trade away a Kevin Huerter? 2 different players who could fulfill a couple of different needs for the Sixers team in order for Sacramento to maybe bring in some pieces that can move the needle more so than the 2 players on the screen right here. Jake Fisher on the state of the Sacramento Kings. The Kings have been calling opposing front offices to gauge the value of packaging Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter, league sources told Yahoo Sports. Let's start here with Harrison Barnes individually, and we know what he's able to bring to the table. He's been in the league for a minute, solid college career at North Carolina, played well with those Warriors teams that were competing deep into the playoffs for NBA championships, winning NBA championships, couple of other stops in his NBA career, got a bag with the Dallas Mavericks, got a bag from the Sacramento Kings. Numbers this year, a little bit down, 11 points per game, 3 rebounds, but you know what's going to play? 48% from the field, 41% from three-point range, but as I said, those numbers taking a little bit of a nosedive as compared to the 3 previous years. And a trade for Barnes, his efficiency is up. And he's a solid defender, but the shot attempts are down. And naturally, sometimes when the shot attempts are down, that's when the efficiency goes up a little bit. Issue here, if you're looking for a playmaker prototype, he's not really that. And his contract, a little bit of a problem at 31 years old. This is kind of what you want to pay a DeJounte Murray, who we talked about a little bit earlier this week. Harrison Barnes checking in $17 million this year. The good thing is, if you bring him in, he's under team control. But is that what Philadelphia wants? Do they want an expiring deal? Because what Woj said, they want to go star hunting potentially this offseason. $18 million in 2024-2025, and then $19 million the following year after that. As for Kevin Huerter, career with the Kings, you know, he gets dealt to Sacramento after a couple of years to start his career with the Atlanta Hawks. We know he was really good, especially later in that series when the Sixers went down to Atlanta. Still haven't been able to get over that. You're looking at a city of Philadelphia, major market that's lost some heartbreakers to some Arizona teams, with the Cardinals of late coming into Philly, the Diamondbacks in the NLCS. Then a couple of years ago, you lose that second-round series to Trae Young in Atlanta. Kevin Huerter was a part of that. The issue with Huerter here is that he could stroke the 3, 39% from distance with some volume there, 47% from the field, 13.5 points per, just a bad defender. He's also currently been in a slump. So he's shooting a career low, 34% from 3 this year, 27% over his last 15 games with his minutes steadily decreasing. And I think those minutes going down because he hasn't been able to give Atlanta all that much on the defensive end of the floor. That being said, could be a good buy low candidate for a player that we've seen be able to play some good basketball throughout his career. And you have the hopes here that maybe he can turn it around. His contract, It's also pretty hefty here, especially if he's not in the rotation for a Sacramento team. And this is probably why they're looking to deal him away. $15.5 million this year, up to nearly 17, then up to nearly 18 in the final 2 years of that deal. So you're looking at that Kings team, 2 realistic trade targets right there. HB for Harrison Barnes, KH for Kevin Huerter. If you were to pick one to trade for the Sixers squad, who would it be? Today's show, by the way, sponsored by Prize Picks. Keep it locked here. Some more trade targets to get to. Get a $100 deposit match, though, at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. Largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America and the best deal that any DFS app has to offer. I know a lot of you Sixers fans aren't necessarily Eagles fans like producer Chip and myself, but we're diehard Eagles fans. So let's roll with some Prize Picks for Monday Night Football, wild card round against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like DeAndre Swift more than a half touchdown. I think the Eagles, especially with some rain in the forecast, going to give them the rock a lot. In week 3 against Tampa Bay, Philadelphia ran it 40 times. Yeah, that's right, 40 times. I think they run it a lot with DeAndre Swift, and Jalen Hurts' finger a little bit banged up. Hassan Reddick, more than 0.75 sacks. Eagles haven't been able to get home to the quarterback. Mysteriously enough, he's been dropping back in coverage. That doesn't make sense. So he gets home here against a banged-up Baker Mayfield. Jake Elliott, more than 6.5 kicking points. Number a little bit high, but if it rains, might have to rely on Jake Elliott for some kicks and PATs. And then Mike Evans against this awful Eagle secondary, more than 68.5 receiving yards. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on the projected stat lines. Meek Mill's in on the action. I am. Producer Chip is as well. Tail us with your picks and with our picks. prizepicks.com/CLNS. Realistic trade target number 3. Let's get the Buddy Hield here. Like Kevin Huerter, he could shoot the 3. A little bit more consistent throughout his career than Kevin Huerter, but like Huerter, not going to be able to play any defense at all. Jake Fisher on him with the Indiana Pacers right now. I do know that Buddy Hield is on the block after he turned down extension numbers from Indiana in the fall. It feels like over the last 5 years, Buddy Hield has been involved in some semblance of trade talks. Like he's always a player that teams are inquiring about and always a player who seems to be on the trade market. And he's been traded a couple of times in his NBA career. This year, averaging almost 13 points per game, almost 40% from the floor, 38% from 3. Not as good as last year when he was up to about 17 points per game and 42.5% from downtown. But those numbers were up from the previous year, 2021-2022, shortened season for him at just 36% from 3. Buddy Hield, if you're looking for a sniper, probably as good as it gets on the market here as far as trades go. He's tied for second in NBA history with 3.1 three-pointers made per game, so he's not afraid to chuck it, and he can make it. Hield on an expiring contract, so he could be a player that the Sixers kind of like and look into because he's on that expiring deal. He plays well. You think about bringing him back. If you don't want him for the long term because he's only a one-way player, then you just let him walk. And I don't know if he's going to cost all that much money. We know that Daryl Morey wants a little bit of flexibility with that bread. Now, if you trade for Hield, you know what you're getting. Catch and shoot threes with the occasional pull-up on offense. Not much, though, in the way of defense. I mean, he's a guy in transition, catches the rock, lets it fly. Yes, I know my shooting form is icy clean, and that's what Buddy Hield's going to be able to bring to the table. Let's go big here, number 4, with our trade targets. Wendell Carter Jr., this surprise Orlando Magic team, has been a pretty fun one to watch, man. And Wendell Carter Jr. is a really, really good player. I know we've talked about some of the Jake Fisher reports here on the show today. Let's go to Mark Stein, though. Orlando's front court depth with Paolo Banchero, Franz, and Moritz Wagner, or Mo Wagner, I should say. Franz Wagner, Mo Wagner. Bad job by me. Come on, Chase. Frequent starter Goga Batazzi and Jonathan Isaac, and the eventual need to sign Banchero and Franz Wagner to lucrative extensions has led to the belief in some rival front offices that Carter is available in this trade window. He was originally traded to Orlando from Chicago in that Nikola Vucevic trade, and now he's with Orlando, and this is a player, look at what he did in 2021-2022. I mean, 15 points per game, 10.5 rebounds 3 years ago, 52.5% from the floor. He can shoot the three a little bit this year. Numbers are down, only 13 games played, 8 points per, 6.5 rebounds, 42.5% from the field, and 40.5% from three. It really is odd that he's not a part of the Magic plans, because a lot of people were talking about him as a building block with Orlando as early as last year. Injury history is a little bit of a concern. Only 13 games played this year, has never played more than 62 games in a season. So you always think about that, especially with Joel Embiid having his injury problems and right now dealing with the nagging knee injury as we speak. He is a hybrid big, stretched the floor a little bit, rebounds very well, came to the league with pedigree, 7th overall pick in 2018. And his contract, very, very affordable. I mean, if this is the going rate for a player who can give you 15 and 10, that's fantastic. A lot of times, often, you're paying a lot more money to a player of his ilk, to a player of his pedigree. And if you trade for Carter, yeah, the injuries are a little bit of a concern, but we saw Joel Embiid be able to get over that. I know he's dealt with a lot of stuff throughout his career, but nothing like catastrophic, knock on wood. And for Carter, can he get over that a little bit as well? Keep in mind that when these players are young, like, they're still growing at an abnormal rate and they're adding so much weight onto their bodies. So sometimes injuries come about because of that. But Carter, only 24 years old, has promise. Probably better suited, though, as a starter elsewhere, as I said a little bit earlier this week, and not a backup. So what is the Sixers' biggest need? Chime in. You evaluate this team. I know I've been against the whole Zach LaVine movement, but I think the Sixers need just another go-to player down the stretch that can help them a little bit, because they've been exposed a little bit with Joel Embiid sidelined. As for Tyus Jones, Kyle Neubeck had a report for PHLY that the dream seems to be dead for Tyus Jones as a backup point guard for this team. I think that he could be utilized in a really, really good way, and I think that Nick Nurse would like a heady player like this. Sam Amico on Tyus Jones here. Wizards believe to be open to trading for the point guard, or trading the point guard, I should say, as they believe he could bring back some picks and perhaps another young player from a contender. And when he was backing up Ja Morant has missed a lot of time throughout his career. And when Tyus Jones would be plugged into the lineup, played a really good hoop. And the wins did not fall off at all for the Memphis Grizzlies. Now he's just on an awful team, so it's hard to gauge that. But a very, very solid backup point guard and a player who could be a spot starter. His career stats with Washington this year, getting a little bit more run, obviously. Almost 13 points per game, 5.5 dimes. Doesn't turn it over a lot for how much he's handling the basketball. 44% from three, 53% from the floor. And then you look at what he was able to do with the Grizzlies, impact player and a valuable player. He was a first-round pick, and with the Timberwolves, maybe didn't live up to those lofty expectations, but has started to find a groove. And you look at those turnover numbers right here, right above my index finger, he doesn't turn it over a lot. And the assist-to-turnover ratio, each of the last 5 years, he's been number one or tied for first in the NBA. So a good decision-maker who can run Nick Nurse's offense, and a player that I think Nurse would really, really like to coach. And then the field goal attempts for Tyus Jones during the 2023-2024 regular season, this kind of goes to show you the efficiency here. We broke down the simple efficiency numbers a little bit earlier. This is another one of those graphics that kind of shows you where he's efficient from. And I like how he can navigate different places on the floor, rise up from the mid-range, knock down some threes, and then he's crafty enough to get to the hoop. Why he makes a lot of sense, he's a perfect player to run your second unit. And I know that a lot of people like Patrick Beverley. I do too. Doesn't mean that you can't still play Patrick Beverley. In fact, Beverley can play a little bit off ball because sometimes he's been able to do that. So gets guys where they want to be, where they need to be, and he can kind of be that distributor who can also score the basketball. So 5 trade targets on today's show that the Sixers could look at here. Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Buddy Hield, Wendell Carter, Tyus Jones. You have wings, you have shooters, you have two-way players, you have a big on here, you have a backup point guard. Great list. Thanks to producer Chip. All right, let's hear from you. Which of these players fits best on the Philadelphia 76ers? We always appreciate and value your feedback and your basketball knowledge down in the chat, so feel free to join the show.